from the rooftop to your doorstop and everything in between. It's Mr. Fix-It Tim Noteboom on It Takes Two with Amy and JJ.
He's in the house, Mr. Tim Noteboom. Welcome back.
Hi, guys.
Good to see you.
Yeah, great to be here.
It's good to see you in what feels like April or May, but it's February.
And we still have winter coming. At some point, it's going to show up, I know.
I know. We're going to get 40 inches of snow in March and April.
Well,
I mean, that's not real, but let's not be surprised when it happens, okay?
They like to say that Mother Nature doesn't come back at you, right? But I kind of feel like maybe she does.
Yeah.
That should have been our old wives' tale.
It'll make its way around.
Yes, it will. Tim Noteboom, any projects you're working on in your house these days?
Really, the last thing I did not that long ago was repaint the inside of our entry door. Our entry door and side lights, we painted the room or had the room painted, but then they didn't do the door because we thought, it'll be fine. Well, then after a week or so, Tammy's like, that doesn't match, and I'd really like that painted the same color as the wall. And so I went and had some paint mixed up, and it's a metal door, and the side lights are, I don't know, I'm thinking there's some sort of metal. They weren't fiberglass. Some are fiberglass. You get both. But it painted real easy.
You painted the metal door?
Yeah, on the inside, because it's a controlled temperature on the inside. If you can paint the outside, you need to use some different type of paints that can bond better to a door that goes from 30 below to 120 degrees in the sun.
Mm-hmm.
But we painted the insides, yeah.
When you're painting something like that, I always worry, well, what happens if I accidentally scratch it? Right?
Yep.
So, is there something you can do? I mean, are you just painting it and they've got enough additives in the paint these days to make it bond, or are you having to do a sealant over the...
Nope. I was able to just paint right over the top of the existing paint that was there. And so it bonds really well and has a nice finish to it. If you're worried about some scratches, they have... you can get some paints with a little more enamel finish to them that are a little harder finish. They're also a little glossier sometimes, so you got to depend on if you want the semi-gloss look or a flat look or what you're looking for. But get just go to a good paint store and tell them what you want to do, and they'll hook you up with the right product.
This is an interesting question, Tim Noteboom. How do I know if a building permit is required for my renovation project?
Each city is a little different on their requirements. Most of the time, if it involves anything structural at all, for sure you need one. It's strange, even though changing shingles isn't necessarily structural, you need a permit for that. Windows, most of the time you need a permit for that. If it's a cosmetic thing, just changing some trim out and doing things, then it's not an issue. But if you are rearranging rooms or doing anything at all structural, then you do need a permit for sure.
Okay. I think when in doubt.
When in doubt,
just
you can
call your city office and
get on their good side. Start off right. And
because I've seen projects where people have had to tear down drywall to show the inside because they ran some electrical and they didn't think it was needed to be permitted or inspected, and turns out it did.
Yep.
Okay, let's get to the phone lines. I think it's Greg. I couldn't hear him very well. Greg, you're on KFGO with Mr. Fix-It.
When you have planked floors, vinyl plank, and one of them starts to lift up, and I know why, because it's on an uneven floor. Is there a way to repair that?
Well, probably the best thing, if it's a glued down vinyl plank, you can try to get a little bit of glue under that corner and weight it down. But if there's any type of debris or any other glue in there, it's not going to line up real well. So sometimes you're best off pulling that whole plank out if you happen to have a spare, and then gluing and placing a whole new sheet down rather than trying to hold a corner down.
These are not glued down. They're floating.
Oh, it's a floating one, so it's an interlocking floor.
Yep. And what's happened is along the long edge, it must have disconnected, and it's starting to lift.
Okay. Yeah, then you might have to take out several on the way to the closest wall and start back over with that, unless it's got some moisture on it. Sometimes they really shouldn't disconnect unless they've got moisture or they've swollen or shrunk enough that they've moved and then disconnected. But yeah, you might end up having to take off 10, 15, 20 pieces to get it all laid back together.
Sure. You can't just cut the edges off and glue it down.
Well, not if it's a floating floor and you want it to continue, because the other floor is going to move around it possibly.
Sure. Sure.
And then you'll have one that's stationary, and then the 2 or 3 around it are going to start moving. And then you'll have gaps and buckle or something. So yeah. Yep.
Okay.
A little more involved than you're thinking. Yep. Good luck.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for the call. What renovation adds the most value to your home? It's a good question.
That sounds like an Eric Hatch question.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, but
Well,
you used to be a home inspector, I guess.
inspector,
Maybe you
yeah.
have some perspective from that point of view.
You know, value, perceived value is going to be things that are pretty visible to people looking at the house, which are going to be, does it have an open floor plan if you're talking about renovations? Looking at a 1980s house that is split up quite a bit and has a bunch of little rooms, or you can't see the dining room, living room from the kitchen type of thing, to open that up. Open floor plans are a good idea possibly. I mean, there's always cosmetic things you can do with carpets and paints just to freshen the house. If you start to renovate bathrooms and kitchens, those are your most expensive renovations to do. And so sometimes it's hard to get a good return on that one, other than you get the selling factor, because you get the wow factor from people, and your home might sell quicker because it's got those things, but you might not get the dollar for dollar return.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Tim, is that some people think, well, I spent $40,000 on my kitchen, so now my house is worth $40,000 more.
Yeah,
that's not always the case, because a lot of times you're updating things that
should have been
needed to be updated anyway.
Yeah. So your $40,000 remodel, it might be worth a $30,000 change, but it's going to attract a buyer quicker because it's there.
I've even heard people say, well, I put $15,000 into my landscaping, which is great if you're attracting somebody who wants to buy a house that has beautiful landscaping. But some people might say, gosh, look at all that work I'm going to have to do.
Right.
And so it is interesting. I would always say, talk to your preferred agent.
Yep.
And let them tell you, hey, listen, this is the trend right now. It's better for you to just have a carpet allowance than replace the carpet, because who knows if this new family wants that particular level of shag.
Want a solid surface. They might want something other than carpet. And the same with paints. I mean, if it's really dated and really bad, you could just do some cosmetic things on a budget-minded thing, but then keep everything very neutral.
Yeah, bingo, right? I mean, that's the thing. You want to keep it as plain as possible so that someone can envision their art hanging on the wall, their couch in the living room. Tim, another question at 35270. Tim Noteboom, he's Mr. Fix-It around the KFGO studios. Any ideas on radon pipe installation? Does it have to be in the middle of the basement or a corner fine where the sump hole is located?
Well, yeah, typically the source of the radon is going to be at a sump pit or some sort of open source in the concrete, because the radon lives below the concrete, in the soil, in the earth down there, and it finds its way through either through a crack or through a sump pit typically. And so it's best to just come right off of the sump pit, seal the lid on that, put a vented pipe there, and then duct that outside.
Yeah. Also, I talked to a friend of mine who they did like a home radon test, and it was coming in at like 10.
Okay.
And they said, well, so we have to do something. I'm like, yeah, you had to do something yesterday at this point. And they said, it's amazing because when you start looking into radon mitigation, it is so common. Once you know what to look at homes, all of a sudden you're going to notice a lot of homes in our area that are using radon mitigation systems.
Right. Yep. Yeah, it's becoming more prevalent, more common, and it was a very hot topic, 10, 15 years ago when it first, became a big thing, and now it's commonplace. Yeah, you see it everywhere.
Mr. Fix-It, Tim Noteboom, is in the studio. Mr. Fix-It, this is a text for you at 35270. I want to insulate and sheetrock my garage. Do you think I will need a permit?
Good question. Probably, if you're going to do electrical work, yes. If you're going to heat it, yes. Otherwise, I would probably go without it.
Right, just insulation and sheetrock. I think you'd be fine with that.
You'd be fine, yeah.
But again, if in doubt,
ask.
Call your city. They'll be more than happy to tell you, and it's better to err on the side of caution. I don't think that there's any difference of blown-in insulation versus bat insulation, but you never know. They might be interested in it.
Yeah, right.
Also, I think one of the things, too, is by pulling a permit, it helps with establishing the price of your home, too. So when you're making upgrades, that affects your home price, which then affects property taxes. So. Mr. Fix-It with Tim Noteboom. You can get a hold of us at the Laney Studio line here at KFGO, 701-237-5948. You can also text us at the KFGO Text Club, sponsored by Adventure RV, 35270. Okay, Tim, let's clean up some of these text messages. Wondering if I should be concerned about penny-sized holes or smaller in my vinyl siding. Found a few over the years here and there. Can rain get in there and cause moisture damage?
Correct.
Penny-sized holes.
Penny size is pretty good size when you think about it. Yeah, once you start developing that, if it's just a crack, then a lot of times moisture can't get in there. Once you start getting, pencil size or penny or anything bigger, yes, we can get some moisture in there, but more importantly, you start getting insects maybe that can start going in there. I've seen bees nest behind the siding and things like that. So, yeah, we want to get that sealed up if time being, if you can't find a piece of siding to replace it with, fill it with some colored caulking or something, or paintable caulk, and just fill the hole up, or some even Carbondo or any like putties that would dry and be paintable. Get something in there and just cover that hole.
Okay, should they be concerned about these showing up? It sounds to me like maybe a bird. Something like that.
It could be a bird. It could be a rock from the lawnmower. It could be something else that caused it. But yeah, it's going to start creating some problems.
Okay. Ballpark figure on a 2,000 square foot home renovation.
I was
1
wondering
3/4 bath, 2 bedroom.
I was wondering if you were going to take the impossible question. Ballpark figure on a 2,000 square foot home renovation.
Wow. Where do you start?
Yeah.
Right.
Renovation. Does that mean just carpet and paint? Well, then, maybe you're going to spend $10,000 painting and carpeting, or flooring. Are you taking carpet out and putting solid surface flooring in? Are we taking walls out? Are we doing a bathroom or a kitchen and fixtures? So, that could be it's kind of a loaded question. It's hard to answer. Is it a $10,000 cosmetic renovation, or is it a $50,000 or $100,000 makeover?
Okay, let me ask you this question, kind of piggybacking on that. If a homeowner wants to save some money and they're doing a renovation, are there things that you think would be safe for them to do that they could save money on? So, for example, if they're having new carpet put in and it's going to cost them $700 to get the old carpet taken out and brought to the dump, are they safe to pull their own carpet?
Yeah, I would. There are things like that you can say. You talk to your installer, talk to the project person if it happens to be flooring, and say, hey, if I tear this out myself, how much will it save? And then look at what you have for landfill fees or something, and the time involved. But yeah, you might want to take that out. Wear a mask because it's going to get dusty. It's going to get a little dirty. But then at least you have some control over how the stuff is getting out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Sweep it up good, things like that. Prep it for him. So there could be some savings there. The same if you're going to re-drywall a section of the house and they were going to tear this out or take some sheetrock off or open up a wall. You could say, yeah, I can take that sheetrock out and haul it away. But so that there are places to save money. There are some places that just aren't worth your time.
You mentioned Eric Hatch earlier. One of the best things he ever taught me, he goes, my best tool in my toolbox is my checkbook. And it seems like some of those are great ways to save money.
Yep.
But by the time you get into it, you might realize, your 3 weekends it took to do this was worth more to you to be able to spend time with family and what you love.
Yep.
Versus, home remodeling it's tough on marriages. It's tough on your sanity.
even just the decision-making process can be hard on relationships. Deciding colors and styles and textures and pieces and light fixtures and things like that can be difficult.
This question, we have a brick overlay on our cement steps that are starting to chip on the surface. Any recommendations on the best way to repair this? If not, who locally could repair it?
Chips in the brick are probably something that really aren't repairable unless you're going to replace the brick. And if you're going to replace one, it might be by the time they get the one out of there and take all the mortar out and then put one back in, it may end up being a total overhaul of that row of bricks to make it look right.
Have you seen where someone has one of those? It's like a poured, but it's hollow in the middle, like concrete steps, and they maybe put too much ice melt on it, and it starts to kind of flake away.
Yep.
Is there? There's nothing to do once it starts that process.
Once it starts flaking and you get down to some of the the rock or the backing or whatever, all the good hard finish is gone. They make some vinyl cement patches that you can spread over it. It's a pretty thin product, and it works for a short amount of time, but then maybe in a year or 2 or 3, you're going to end up doing it again because it's not thick enough to actually get a good bite on anything or hold well. So
okay, let's stick with cement. This person wants to know cement block versus poured foundations. Your preference?
Well, my preference, if dollars don't matter, then it'd be poured foundation. If it's going to be a good place for block basements or a good application, sandy soils, so there's not a lot of pressure from the earth or expanding, moisture. So that's a good application. Or if it's garden level or split level, so you're not got an 8-foot block wall, I would try to shy away from full 8-foot basements with block walls in our region of the soils here because it's all clay and hard. Heavy soils, and when it gets wet and expands and contracts, it pushes that block pretty easy. So that would be my choice there. And again, if it's a dollars and cents thing, or if dollars doesn't matter because poured is going to cost you more. But again, it's do you want do you want Kleenex or do you just want a piece of toilet paper to blow your nose with?
Sure. Yeah. Name brand. I like that. Mr. Fix-It. What county office can I get a hold of about radon? So if someone is interested in radon, who should they be talking to in their county itself?
In the county office?
I know that for Cass County, if you search Cass County radon, they provide a certain amount of tests every year that you can get a hold of, but they're usually snapped up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
If you're talking about mitigation specifically, I guess I would call someone who does a pro at it.
Who does mitigation.
Yeah, they'll know exactly who to talk to about that.
I think in Moorhead they've got some environmental services department or something that might lead you in the right direction.
And that's something, don't sleep on that.
No.
And do you need, going down into your basement, are you going to die tomorrow? No, but radon is the number 2 cause of lung cancer in the United States behind smoking.
Okay.
And it is one of those things where you don't smell it. It just is sitting in your basement if you happen to have it come up. And it's very prevalent in our neck of the woods. Some pits are a great spot where it likes to seep into your house. So if you've never tested your basement for radon and your home is over 30 years old, you should get it tested. I did last year, and I was surprised.
We just tested ours a couple of months ago, actually, because we've lived in the house now for a decade, and so it probably hasn't been tested in a decade, and I don't even remember if we got it tested when we moved in, so it just felt better to have it tested. It was fine, but it just felt better to have it tested.
And now winter readings will vary from summer readings.
Oh, okay.
Because winters, the house is closed up a little more, and it's not as active as far as windows and fresh air.
So you'll actually get a better reading now, right, than you would?
Typically, it would be higher this time of year.
Interesting. Mr. Fix-It, my front cement steps have a raised aggregate finish. It has a crack in one corner. Is there a fix?
Well, you're not going to be able to get that crack, get it sealed back together or bonded. But what I would probably do with that crack, or anytime I'd get a crack in concrete that I didn't want it to grow any further, is to seal that crack. Get a product, fill it in so no more water gets in that crack. Because what happens this time of year, freeze-thaw, water runs down, it gets in those cracks, and at nighttime it freezes. And when water expands, it freezes, it expands, and it pushes that crack open further and further. So So the first thing I would do is get something in there and fill that crack. Yep.
Okay. On the topic of radon, someone said there's a device called the Echo Cube you can buy off of Amazon. It is a 24-hour-a-day monitor for radon. Will give you nice tables as far as past radon levels. Interesting. I know we even talked about that during an IMA Doctors, that there are, these little radon tests that you can buy on Amazon,
right,
and sort of test it yourself as well. And then if there is some legitimate concern on your part, you can bring in.
Then you bring in the professional to bring a monitoring system over for a couple days, and then they can get a more of a clear reading.
Right. Yep. Makes sense. Did we get to this Zillow one?
No.
I mean, I don't know that we can really answer this.
This is the second unanswerable question of Mr. Fix-It.
How does Zillow get so much detailed information on properties? I imagine that it's just from previous sales of your house. Like everything is online. You can kind of find.
Yeah,
right?
I think they're just doing comparables and kind of random things based on neighborhood, age of the home, square footage. They probably have an algorithm that says it's this many square feet, and in this neighborhood, and the houses are 2010 houses, and boom.
We do know from previous conversations with many real estate experts on this show that Zillow is often wildly inaccurate.
Yep. Don't trust
with
that
its
Zestimate.
information. So don't trust it. I know people still look at it, but I wouldn't trust it 100%.
Right.
Let's go back to your contractor days for a second.
Yeah.
So incredibly nice winter we're having right now. People are thinking about spring. They're thinking about summer. What's the advanced time that you think someone should reach out to a contractor if they're thinking about doing a project? Now, of course, everyone's different in your chosen contractor, but I mean, should you be mad if someone says that they can't start until July 1st?
No, that's going to be the commonplace now. So if you're trying to get a project done this year at all, this summer, this spring, you need to get on that now, to get on that bus and get in line, because things are going to fill up quickly. Products are getting more readily available now, and we had a big mess trying to get product, but now the labor stuff changes because people their work schedules have changed from when we used to do things 20, 30 years ago. So they're not filling their workforce like we did back then. So they're going to be pushed out 5, 6, 8 months. So get on those projects.
So if you want something done by my birthday in October, you're calling right now.
Yep. Start making those calls. It
makes
doesn't hurt to make those calls. You're not out anything.
Tim Noteboom, Mr. Fix-It here on KFGO. We'll see you back here March 6th from 1 to 2 o'clock.
Perfect. See you then.
Good.